Welcome to PatsCast. The Patriots win 24-23, coming to you from Foxborough, Massachusetts. I've been to many road games over the years. I live in Texas. My first Patriots game at Gillette in 7 years, and what a game it was. Patriots survive a nail-biter there in the second half, only scoring 3 points in the second half in a game that looked like, at least in the first quarter and midway through the second quarter, the Patriots were going to run away with another blowout victory, but give the Falcons some credit at their ability to get to the quarterback, to force turnovers, and to scheme things up on offense and make life difficult for the Patriots defense. And not just with the injuries, which I'll get to in just a second, but setting up different mismatches, pushing a wide receiver into motion and forcing Marcus Jones, small cornerback, to cover Drake London. And that's really how the Falcons were able to generate a ton of offense in this game, because they were not getting much there in the first half, but by the second half, they were running the football effectively. They were throwing the ball downfield, getting the ball to Drake London, and the Patriots kind of stalled on offense. So this was a game that, it felt like the Patriots should win this game by 2 scores, but they struggled there quite a bit in the second half, and a lot of that had to do with injury. The Patriots have a big game next week ahead against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they have some players that they may have lost that is going to make life a bit difficult for this team, unfortunately, and the injury bug hasn't gotten to them so far this season until today. Lost Kayshon Boutte in the second quarter to a hamstring injury. You never know with these hamstring injuries. It could just be a few days and Boutte's back out there in the lineup next week. Could be like Christian Gonzalez, where he has to take 2 months off. We hope that's not the case, but he's a real security blanket for Drake May, and the second he was out of the game and you had to have Kyle Williams fill into his spot, didn't work out very well. I think there was a point where Kyle Williams ran the wrong route on third down, and Drake May threw it to him. I think he was supposed to run an out route, and he went in, and Patriots had to punt the football because of it. So, losing big players is going to cost this team quite a bit. They are not the deepest roster in the NFL. They have great starters for the most part. But, you lose a guy like Kayshon Boutte, your number 2 wide receiver, your X guy, that Drake May, nobody's open. You can throw it up to him, and he'll go up and get it. You lost him, and that really hampered the offense there in the second half. They also lost Christian Ellis to a hamstring injury as well. That's a big loss. And perhaps even greater, Christian Gonzalez went out of the game late with a concussion. Never came back in, really disoriented. The kind of concussion where you go, maybe he won't be out there and in the lineup next week against the Bucs, which, we know Tampa's got some of the best receivers in the NFL. I know they're a bit banged up, but you're going to want Christian Gonzalez out there, so we hope for a speedy recovery. They were without Ramondre Stevenson today, so they had to rely on Travion Henderson to fill in, as well as Terrell Jennings, who they seem a lot more comfortable running the football with between the tackles than they do Henderson, who's more of an outside guy. And for the most part, the Patriots were able to generate yards on the ground. They had 90 yards rushing if you take out Drake May. But a lot of that, again, came in the first half. And this was one of those games where we were expecting at some point Drake May was going to have a setback game. Today was that day. And that's not to say May wasn't productive. He was 19 of 29 passing, 259 yards through 2 touchdown passes, still had a passer rating over 100, which basically the same passer rating he had in the Buffalo Bills game, where everyone said this was Drake May's coming out game. But today was not his best performance. He had an interception, of course, kind of threw the ball behind Hunter Henry. Also fumbled the ball a couple times. One was a costly fumble at the end of the first half that allowed the Falcons to get back into the game, get the ball in the red zone, and they were able to score a touchdown in the final seconds to keep it close when it looked like the Patriots were really going to run away with it and make it a 24-7 game. Costly fumble there. He also fumbled it in the third quarter, was able to recover it himself. So between, the 2 fumbles and the interception, Drake May struggled. And he also struggled with some accuracy in the second half. And I think the Falcons defense was getting to him a little bit. There were 6 sacks during the game. I think a lot of that had to do with some challenging guard play from Jared Wilson and Mike Onwenu. Both were charged with allowing sacks, and real struggle there up the middle. Drake May kind of under constant pressure all game, and this is the first time where he looked a bit rattled there. And that's not to say Drake May was horrible, but he had 3 scoring drives in the first half. A great deep shot, 58-yard strike to Demario Douglas to get on the board early, but some miscommunications there with his receivers. Kyle Williams running the wrong route, as I mentioned. He overthrew Kayshon Boutte at one point before he went out with an injury. And Patriots really did struggle there. His mechanics started to break down. He started to look a little bit like rookie Drake May. But it's not something that, you're super concerned about. He was setting records as the most accurate 20-plus yard downfield quarterback in NFL history. I'm sure he's regressing back to the mean after today's game. But, nothing to panic about, but it's the kind of game where you say the offensive line play needs to be better. Drake May needs to make better decisions. He needs to slide a little bit more. There were a few questionable plays where he probably should have slid a little bit earlier. But, we've just raised the bar for May, right? I mean, if this was Drake May's first game of the season and he had this performance, we would say, I think it was a pretty solid game, but it was not the MVP caliber play that we've seen over the last 5 weeks or so from Drake May. But, an exciting game, obviously. 3 points only for the Patriots offensively in the second half. The Falcons had 9. And look, I was wrong, clearly, about John Parker Romo being the kicker in New England. He won the job, in my opinion. He was the better kicker in training camp versus Andy Borregales. But outside of that first game, the first couple games where Borregales really struggled, he's been perfect as a kicker. And John Parker Romo has had his struggles at time in Atlanta. He had a chance today after the Falcons scored what should have been a game-tying touchdown, missed the PAT, kept it a 1-point game, and the Patriots were able to tighten things up on defense. Atlanta shooting themselves in the foot with penalties late in the game didn't help, but gutsy call there late in the fourth quarter. The Patriots tried to run out the clock a little bit, ended up in, I think, a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6 situation, and instead of running the ball, forcing the Falcons to use their last timeout and punting it with about a minute left, Drake May threw a great pass over to Hunter Henry on the left side, who wisely slid in bounds to clinch the ball game. So, this is one of those games where good teams win, right? Because they're not playing their best. The offense is struggling in the second half, but the defense stepped up when they needed to, and they made plays at the right time. It's one of those games where I'm not sure the Patriots are going to be jumping a lot of teams in the power rankings. The Colts did lose today to the Pittsburgh Steelers, so they now have the same record as the Patriots, but Patriots sit at 3rd now in the AFC. So they won, but moved back a spot because Denver, with their victory, have a better strength of victory. So the Patriots, despite now having the same record as the Colts and the Denver Broncos, actually slid back a spot to 3rd in the AFC instead of being the first team. But they're well in the mix. They have a shot at getting that first round bye. Tough matchup next week against Tampa. Baltimore is going to be tough. Cincinnati, I don't think, is a gimme. And of course, you have the Bills one more time. So I wouldn't bet on it. But, this is one of those games where you just have to figure out how to escape with a victory. Because, look, I think the Patriots have a better coaching staff than Atlanta and Raheem Morris. I think he struggles in in-game situations. I don't know why they didn't go for it. 4th and 20 at the end of the game where, even if you don't get the first down, they still have a chance to kick a field goal and take the lead late in the fourth quarter. They decide to punt, and the Patriots are able to run out the clock that way. So not great coaching there, but schematically, finding ways to get Drake London open, taking advantage of those mismatches where looks like Christian Gonzalez is going to be on him. Patriots are in zone, you move a receiver out to the outside, and then suddenly your nickelback, Marcus Jones, is stuck covering Drake London, and they just feasted on the Patriots defense that way. And of course, when you lose Christian Gonzalez, that didn't help. They started targeting the boundary a lot more. They were far more effective at running the football in the second half. Atlanta, they were running the ball to the outside instead of between the tackles. So Bijan Robinson, who really couldn't do much at all in the first half, ended up getting 46 yards, most of which came in the second half, and Atlanta kept it close. This was Atlanta's been hit or miss all season long. They've beaten good teams. They beat Buffalo. They had a few spectacular games early in the season, but they've also had a few clunkers, including their last game, which they got blown out But this was a game where I think the Falcons showed up, and the Patriots still, were not playing their best. They got hit by the injury bug, and they somehow escaped with a victory. And a lot of that came with establishing the run, right? And you knew it was going to be tough with Travion Henderson making his first start at running back with Terrell Jennings. Really the only two running backs they relied on. And, Jennings scored his first NFL touchdown. They're comfortable running him between the tackles, and he didn't look much worse than Ramondre Stevenson. Didn't fumble the ball, certainly, but they were playing very physical, and they even had their fullback Westover in there as a lead blocker. Kyrus Tonga lined up at fullback at one point during the game, but the run efficiency kind of faltered there in the second half, and Atlanta really cracked down on it, but it was the big plays there in the first half that helped the Patriots build up a big lead and ultimately hold on to the victory. Of course, there was the breakout performance today by Demario Douglas, who seems to improve week after week after a slow start to the season. He finished the game with 4 catches and 100 yards. 58 yards of that came on the touchdown bomb. Also, Stephon Diggs made an excellent play there in the end zone to score his second touchdown in a Patriots uniform. They were really creative early, multiple personnel packages. They had Westover lined up on the outside at receiver, running back in the slot. They were doing lots of different things, and I feel like they tightened up there in the second half instead of, trying to make big plays downfield. But the interior protection was a real issue between Owenu and Jared Wilson and Bradbury at the center position. That Drake May is going to be under pressure, right, consistently. I think we're impressed with the pass protection. It's better than we were expecting before the season started. The run blocking leaves more to be desired, but they've been better over the last few weeks. But, 6 sacks. Drake May got sacked 5 times by Myles Garrett last week. I think he had 6 sacks total then. He's taken a lot of hits, and they need to figure out ways to protect the quarterback a little bit better, or else, we're going to be entering week 16, week 17, week 18. Drake May is going to be banged up and not the same quarterback when we get to the postseason. And I don't care how resilient he is. You end up getting sacked 6 times during the game. The quarterback's going to get in their head a little bit in those situations, and Drake May certainly did not look like the same quarterback today in the second half. But, got to give credit to the defense. Caleb Von Chason had an excellent game, an early sack, 3 pressures, really set the tone. The Patriots defense, for the first time in, 7-8 weeks, didn't allow a score on the first drive. The Falcons went 3 and out. Chason had something to do with that. Milton Williams had an excellent game, 5 pressures. He forced an intentional grounding, which is what set the Atlanta Falcons back and allowed the Patriots to make a key stop there late in the fourth quarter and ultimately win the game. And they stopped the run. Atlanta much better in the second half running it to the outside, but, the defensive line for the Patriots has just been tremendous. They're the only team in the NFL at this point that is yet to allow a single running back to rush the ball over 50 yards. I mean, that is an impressive stat, and that's been the biggest strength of this team all season long, is you just can't run on them. Now, I think the Falcons did expose something there in the second half that the Patriots are going to have to clean up with some of the wide zone stuff that they were running pretty effectively, and it'll be interesting to see what Tampa does next week if they watch the film and say, all right, we're not going to be able to run it up the middle against these guys. We'll run it on the outside. We'll throw it on the outside. We're going to force this defense to play horizontally and then make big plays downfield off of that. Gonna be a tough matchup against Baker Mayfield and the Bucs, and they're going to be coming off of a bye, which makes it even harder. But, the run fits, the gap discipline, it's excellent. And, the Falcons, really the only thing that they could get going was with Drake London, who had a spectacular game, right? 3 touchdowns, 9 catches, 118 yards. And as I said many times, most of that came with just the scheme and forcing mismatches with Marcus Jones. And look, I don't think the Patriots are a very good zone defense team. If you have Christian Gonzalez out there and he's healthy, hopefully he'll be back next week. Carlton Davis, he's in the back 9 of his career, has not performed up to par this season. Marcus Jones had probably his worst game of the season today, but, he got a 3-year extension for a reason. He's been excellent. He's been guarding big tight ends, but you can't expect him to go up against Drake London play after play and not get beat. And that happens often with zone. And I think the Patriots should just play a lot of man. They have the DBs to do it. And, Mike Vrabel, to his credit, he's built a defense that doesn't allow a ton of explosive plays. But, I will take getting beat over the top occasionally versus, running zone and teams being able to chip away, as the Falcons did there quite a bit in the second half. So I'd love to see the Patriots. They play differently coming out of the locker room with a big lead than they do when it's a tight game. Like last week against Cleveland, it was only a 3-point game. Patriots were very aggressive there in the third quarter and were able to build up a big lead, whereas today they played tight, they played clock management, they thought they had the game easily, and it allowed Atlanta to kind of get back into it. And Atlanta, of course, getting a ton of pressure to Drake May didn't help, but former Patriot Parker Romo ultimately won the game, so he's still helping the team. That was good to see on the missed extra point. Andy Borregales continues to be perfect ever since week 2 when he was struggling with those PAT misses. The punting did pin the Falcons deep in the fourth quarter twice. That was good. I still think Behringer, he's having a bit of an off year, but really came up late with some great special teams plays between the deep punts and not allowing the Falcons to get past the 20-25 yard line. But, big picture, the Patriots have won 6 straight. They're now 7-2. And, right now the Chiefs, you can see it in the reflection behind me, the Chiefs are playing the Buffalo Bills. Patriots have a chance to take a 1.5 game lead in the AFC East and really contend for that first round bye. And worst case scenario, and I do not want this to happen, Chiefs don't win the division in the AFC West. They somehow end up with the 6th or 7th seed, and the Patriots end up at number 2 or number 3, host a home playoff game in the wild card round, and then have to face Kansas City. I really do not want that to happen. But look, we're talking about them getting a first-round bye at this point. I don't think any of us expected them to start 7-2, especially after they started 1-2 and the way they looked against the Raiders week 1, the turnovers week 3 against Pittsburgh. The fact that they've won 6 in a row, really a testament to Drake May and how well, the big leap that he's taken, the fact that he's in the MVP race. Mike Vrabel obviously in line for Coach of the Year. And of course, Josh McDaniels. I didn't love the scheme there in the second half today, and hopefully they can stay aggressive. I think they got to throw the ball more. I mean, I guess they threw it 29 times today, which is a bit more than the last few weeks, but we saw it early in the game, but we didn't see those explosive plays downfield there in the second half that we've been seeing week after week after week. But look, they're winning gritty games. They're imperfect games. This was a game where you just had to bite your nails, find a way to survive, and force the Falcons to make a mistake, which they did on the PAT after they tried to tie the game there late in the fourth quarter. Drake May has to win these games, and he has been winning them. You win games ugly sometimes, and you got to learn to close those ugly games, which they ultimately did on that ballsy call to throw the ball to Hunter Henry instead of just trying to have the Falcons chew up all of their timeouts. Patriots have the second easiest schedule in the NFL the rest of the way. Doesn't mean they don't have tough matchups. They have a very tough one next week, as I said, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I think the MVP of this game on the defensive side, K'Lavon Chaisson. On the offensive side, has to be Pop Douglas. Notable mention, of course, is Milton Williams, who continues to be an impactful player. Love the way they're moving around Khyiris Tonga and even bringing him in on offense. But they got to find a way to prevent these mismatches with Marcus Jones. You don't want Marcus Jones covering your tallest player. You don't want him covering tight ends, although he can make plays. But when you're against a Drake London, it's not going to work out very well. And if you're without Christian Gonzalez next week against the firepower that Tampa has, it's going to be a tough one. But it wasn't pretty, but the Patriots are 7-2 now. Style points don't matter. They ultimately survived, and now they go on the road in a tough, warm, humid environment in Tampa. Game of the week. I know it wasn't flexed to game of the week, but they have Jim Nantz, Tony Romo calling the game. Going to be a big one, a big statement game for the Patriots if they can escape with a victory. I'm guessing they're the underdogs heading into this one, considering it's on the road. But look, a nail-biter, a tough one, only 3 points in the second half, plenty to improve on, but you still got the win, and that's the important part. So the Patriots, well, let's see, right now, Buffalo's up 21-10, so maybe they'll only have a one-game lead coming out of this one, but we'll see if the Chiefs ultimately make a comeback. But That's it for this episode of PatsCast. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and we'll see you soon.